In my last video, I did a deep dive into sRGB and put a lot of work into an isolated program. So the first thing I need to do here is transport everything that I learned from that video back into the code that I've been working on with all the other features. And then after that, I'm going to make some decisions about what to do next. In this arc, I've been trying to improve the quality of my graphic system. I've mostly focused on the visual quality so far, and my to-do list for that part is mostly done. If we look at it, the only thing that I haven't finished yet is improving the performance. But now I'm not so sure that I actually want to work on that. Everything I've done so far has been about piecing together this effect to test whether or not it's useful to have in my codebase. In particular, I'm talking about this idea of incorporating velocity into the shader as a parameter in order to try to make it convenient to anti-alias moving rectangles automatically. Looking at how everything went, it really doesn't seem like I like this effect. In fact, it turns out that when the rectangle's moving super fast, I clamp the velocity so that it's not creating any performance problems, and I didn't really like the aesthetics of it anyways when it was moving that fast. And when it's moving slow, I have to tweak the velocity. It can't be the real velocity because that doesn't create the anti-aliasing effect that I want. So on either case, I am not really using the velocity vector the way that I thought it would be convenient, and so it sort of calls into question whether or not this is working. I think my conclusion is that I have failed to really find a compelling use for this velocity idea. I have managed to improve my understanding of anti-aliasing, and from how I understand it, it's never really going to be possible to do anti-aliasing on something that's animating without baking in a lot of contextual knowledge of what that thing is going to be doing throughout the frames. In other words, I need to know what's going to happen in the next few frames and what happened in the previous few frames to make a good decision about how to render this frame. And taking all that context and boiling it down to a simple velocity parameter isn't good enough. It misses a lot of other stuff, like skinny rectangles versus fat rectangles wanting to be different, textured things versus non-textured things being different, things that are moving at a pixel rate versus things that are moving at a sub-pixel rate, and so on and so on. Things that are very, very close to sitting still are very different from things that are moving at about a quarter of a tenth or a tenth of a pixel. So all that context just doesn't boil down to a simple, single, continuous parameter. It's easier to handle it on a case-by-case basis, I think. So I'm going to embrace that, and with that decision or idea in mind, it's now possible to pin down a few main ideas of how I want to structure the system. First, I'm going to drop the velocity vector stuff, as I've just been saying. I'm going to go ahead and make everything gamma aware. The previous video made it pretty clear to me that I know how to do that now, and I think it's the right thing to do. And I'm going to stick with the sign distance functions. So I had been thinking about switching off of the sign distance function to something like the distance calculations or the exact area calculations I've been doing. But all that stuff, while it was interesting, was way more computationally expensive. In order to get roundness, I still think that the sign distance function is the best option. So I'm going to go ahead now and make all those simplifications to the Scratch program I've been working on. By removing the velocity parameter from my shader, I'm essentially making a claim. And the claim I'm making is that I can make slow-moving skinny rectangles look good just by tweaking them from the user's path by changing things like their width and their height. And because I don't have this velocity vector anymore, I don't have any other parameters I can tweak them with, but I think that that is true. I think that all I really wanted to do ever was tweak their width and height a little bit, and that was a good enough way to solve the main issue I had. So here I'm going to go ahead and test that assumption by showing how I would make an anti-aliased rectangle looking good under those conditions, and if I can do that, I'll be good to go. And this looks pretty good to me. I think with this in place, I now know what the heart of my renderer is going to look like. There are still some other parts to improve the quality on though, so let's look at a new to-do list. I want to spend some time fleshing out some more flexible features like how to make rounded corners independent from other corners so that I can have some corners be rounded and some not, and other features like that that I might play with along the way. And I want to make sure that the API gets a cleanup pass. I had some issues with it when I was using it a year ago to do certain things, and those issues haven't been touched since then. And I also want to make some adjustments to the performance still. I kicked that off of the old to-do list because why boil down the performance of something that I wasn't going to stick with? But now that I've simplified it to the heart of the system I actually want, I still want to do a performance pass. So those are the things that I'm going to be working on coming up, and that's what we'll get started on next time. See you then.